Tales of Arise is the latest in the series of the Tales of JRPGs released by Bandai Namco, and it's been getting pretty good reviews. I've loved the Tales series since Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube, which was my first Tales of game, and in my opinion still one of the best ones. I love how the Tales of games always deliver a grand and sprawling story that feels like you're watching an entire trilogy in one game. They always deliver some of the best stories in all of gaming. Now I think Tales of Arise is a great game, definitely deserving of its praise. It gets many things right with its story and has some pretty amazing twists. However, it commits a cardinal sin of storytelling. Let's explore what I mean. Tales of Arise starts strong. We are introduced to Alfin, our main character, who at the time can't even remember his own name, all due to the effect of the mask he cannot take off. And for some reason, he also cannot feel pain. He and the other Danans are slaves, working in a sort of quarry ruled over by the Renans. And yes, trust me, I know, the Danans and Renans, I don't know if it's just me that gets confused by the similarities in the names. We end up learning a lot very quickly, and none of it really feels like it's force-fed to the player. The Renans actually come from another planet, and rule over the Danans because of the astral arts they can use. And there is actually a crown contest going on at the moment, where the Danan homeworld is being ruled over by 5 Renan lords, who are all trying to win the crown contest and become the new sovereign and rule over all of the Renans. The way they do this is by supplying Rena with astral energy, which they are using the Danans to harvest, Rena being the homeworld of the Renans. Very quickly after the game begins, Alfin meets up with Shion, a Renan girl whose goal is to take down the 5 lords of the crown contest, though her motives for doing so remain a mystery. She also has a curse placed on her, meaning that if anyone touches her, they receive immense pain. Alfin, who can't feel pain, is able to touch her, and thus wield the power she controls, the Burning Sword, and together they help the rebellion defeat the Lord of the area. Now, all of this is pretty cool on paper. Why does Shion have this curse? Why does Alfin have this mask on, and why can't he remember anything? Why can't he feel pain? And what is Shion's real motive? There are a lot of initial questions that make you want to keep playing the game to find out why. Though after playing, I feel like these could have been implemented a bit better. And this is where the sin I mentioned comes into play. For the next 20 to 25 hours of play, the party's goal is to defeat the 5 lords. The problem is that very little story happens during this time. It really feels like find the 5 MacGuffins. Now the party grows in size and we get introduced to new characters, but every area with a lord we visit feels like its own self-contained short story. There are some ties to the greater story, but not many. And not only that, but it doesn't feel like you're making much progress towards the end of the game, as even after you defeat your 3rd lord, for example, you know you've still got 2 more to go. This actually really reminds me a bit of Tales of Zestiria, where we had some really awesome story for like the first 10 hours of the game, and then the last like 20 to 30 hours of the game were just a fetch quest. But if you enjoy Tales of Arise, I would highly recommend trying the other Tales games in the series, as story-wise I would say this game's story is pretty average for the series as a whole. Take Tales of Symphonia for example. It has a similar story structure at the beginning where Colette and party must travel to a bunch of shrines to prepare Colette for her main duty, which is to reverse the flow of energy between the worlds. However, with every shrine she starts to lose more of her senses, giving a deep foreboding feeling, and then when you finally reach the final stop, which is less than halfway into the game, we get this epic plot twist and something that completely turns the story on its head. The bulk of the game in Tales of Arise feels like that initial 10 to 15 hours of Tales of Symphonia, except for some reason they decided to make this the majority of the game. And this is the sin I was talking about. Apart from the characters becoming closer with one another, there is little to no story progression throughout the majority of Tales of Arise. You know when Final Fantasy XIII came out and people were like, just play until you reach this point 20 hours into the game, the game gets good, then. That's kind of what I feel a little towards Tales of Arise. It's a good job that the characters and gameplay make up for it, and of course the story and plot twist after that 25-hour mark of the game. But I've spoken about my criticisms of the game, let's talk about what I really like about this game. Plot twist can be a hard thing to pull off. You generally need to give the reader or the player foreshadowing, hints within the story, so that when the twist is delivered, you as the player connect the dots and go, Ah. As I was playing through Tales of Arise, I questioned why there was not more technology. If the Renans came from another world, then where are the starships? Where is the advanced tech they would have brought with them? And why are there so few of them? You would have also thought that if a group started going around killing lords, then Renan authorities would hunt you down. And since the level of tech is so much lower, I'm not sure what chance our main heroes would have. There's also the differences between the Renans and the Danans. Why do they look the same? I honestly thought, as I was playing through the game, that these were just restrictions that the writers had to work with when the game was being made. The Tales of games are more AA games than AAA. I thought it just had something to do with the game's budget, but I was wrong. If you haven't played the game yet, I don't want to spoil some of the game's best moments. Needless to say though, that after the 25-hour mark, the story is great, going from plot twist to plot twist and discovery to discovery. Compared to the first 25 hours, I couldn't put the game down for the last 10 to 15. I just wish that instead of the 5 lords, there had only been like 3, and the rest of the story had been more like the end after the 5 lords were defeated. There are also some execution of story moments I think could have been done better. Around the 24-hour mark, Alfin gets some of his memories back, and we learn that he is 300 years old. Not actually 300 years old, but born 300 years ago. And that he was responsible for this massive explosion that took place and took many lives, and that took years to rebuild. The issue is that we needed to be told about this. It would have been so much better to live in a current world that is suffering from that explosion. Perhaps it did something like destabilize the weather or make monsters more dangerous. We needed to traverse the crater where it happened and see for ourselves the consequences of this explosion, learning that it took place 300 years prior, so that when the reveal happens, we're like, oh shit. And we know exactly what they're talking about without needing to be filled in. This is what I mean by there being a disconnect with parts of the story of this game. There is also no true villain in this game. For the most part, the 5 lords are separated, and other than one that joins your party, they don't really show up again in the game. I think there was a good opportunity in this game to have a villain that is present throughout a lot of the game. Volron, who is the 5th lord, could have been a good villain. He is parallel to Alfin, having the same abilities as him, but despite having gone through the same thing as him, he has trodden down a different path and wants different things. This is a difference that should have been brought up and emphasised more throughout the game. A character that we should have seen more of, but this character feels so underdeveloped that he barely speaks when we even see him. Still, I like a lot of the messages this game gave off, about showing that there is actually less differences between people than you think, and how despite what race you are, it's working together that makes the world a better place. Touching briefly on the side of gameplay, Tales of Arise has some of the best in the series, with spells and Alfin's blazing sword in particular changing the landscape you're fighting on. Side quests have been given a quality of life update by actually appearing on your map, and the game giving players the ability to fast travel back to places and tackle side quests as they see fit. It would have been nice if they had a recommended level for these quests though, as sometimes you can come up against an endgame boss without even realising it. The new skits also look really nice, but I think they tended to use these a little too much throughout the game as replacements for what should have been normal cutscenes. To close off, I think this game is much like its characters. There is a rocky start of distrust, but over time, they begin to trust and rely upon one another, eventually becoming good friends. By the end of Tales of Arise, I was sad to put it down, and wholeheartedly could not wait for the next game in the Tales of series. Thank you very much for listening to this writer's critique review kind of video. I really appreciate anyone who has made it this far in the video. If you like what you see and want to see more, please give me a like, maybe sub to the channel. Hey, even just a comment would go a long way. This has been That's Effin' Rich. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.